Hello dear students, my name is Dragana Radojčić and I am an English teacher. At the beginning, I would like to thank you for taking interest in this presentation. Our topic is the past passive. Now, the best way to explain any grammatical structure is by using examples. So please pay attention to the following one. David Heyman produced Harry Potter. This is an active sentence where David Heyman is the subject. When we want to transform this active statement into the passive one, David Heyman comes at the end position in the passive sentence. And now it becomes the passive agent. Now, Harry Potter, in this first active sentence, has got the function of an object. When we transform this sentence into the passive one, this object, Harry Potter, now comes at the first position in the sentence and it becomes subject. Produced, it's an active verb which is transformed in the following way into the passive sentence. Was produced. So we need to use auxiliary verb in past simple, was or were. In this particular case it's was because it's singular. And past participle produced. Now, as you see, in the first sentence, which is an active sentence, we have past simple, produced. When we transform this sentence into the passive one, produced now has got the following form. Was produced. As I already said, was is an auxiliary verb in its past simple form, and produced is past participle. So now you can see once again the difference between these two statements. The first one is an active sentence and the second one is passive. Now, only transitive verbs can form passive. It's very important to bear in mind this information. Here is an active verb in the past simple, wrote. So let's pay attention to the following sentence. Shakespeare wrote Hamlet. Shakespeare in this sentence is the subject. Wrote is an active verb in past simple. And Hamlet is the object. Now, let's change the sentence to the passive. When we make an active sentence passive, the object becomes the subject. So, Hamlet now comes at the first position in a passive sentence and it becomes the subject. Wrote, which is an active verb, is transformed as was written. And Shakespeare, which was the subject in an active sentence, now has got the form by Shakespeare, which is a passive agent. Now, look at the following examples, please. Can you recognize this character in the picture? Yes, it's Columbus. Why is he so famous? Well, because Columbus discovered America. This is an active statement. Columbus discovered America. This is an active sentence in past simple. Now, let's pay attention to this one. America was discovered by Columbus. What's different here? The first sentence is an active statement, and the second one is passive. So, let's pay attention to the following two pictures. Here, we've got a famous author, William Shakespeare. And here you can recognize these two characters, Romeo and Juliet. Now, Romeo and Juliet was written by Shakespeare. This is a passive sentence expressed in past simple. Now, can you recognize this picture? I'm sure you can. This is Mona Lisa, and this is a famous painter, Leonardo da Vinci, and Mona Lisa was painted by Leonardo da Vinci. The Great Wall of China was built by Chinese emperors. Again, we've got here one example of past passive. I'm sure that you can recognize this object in the picture. It's the telephone. And this man in the picture is Graham Bell, who invented the telephone. So let's try now to see this sentence. Telephone was invented by Graham Bell. This is passive structure in past simple. The Acropolis was built by ancient Greeks. Again, here we have one passive structure. The Acropolis here has got the function of the subject. Was built is a passive verb, and by ancient is the agent in this sentence. So let's pay attention to some of the information about the past passive. The passive, generally speaking, is used when the doer of the action is unknown. For example, I was forced to protest. Or when the doer of the action is self-evident or unknown. So let's pay attention to the following examples. He was elected president. The new members were welcomed. When we don't want to mention the doer of the action, for example, he was told never to come here. In this case, we don't mention by whom the action was performed, so we don't have the doer of the action. Tea was spilt all over the cloth. Again, you can see that in this example as well, we don't mention the doer of the action. We don't know by whom this activity was performed. When we want to stress the doer of the action, in that case, the doer takes an end position. So, in this particular example, they were shown to the table by the head waiter. Now, by the head waiter in this sentence has got the function of the doer of the action or the passive agent, and it takes the end position in the sentence because we want to emphasize its importance. That's why we mentioned this doer of the action in this sentence. The parcel was brought by John himself. Again, in this example, we have by John himself. This structure has got or performs the function of the doer of the action or passive agent. Why did we mention by John himself in this sentence? Because we wanted to stress the doer of the action or to emphasize the importance of John himself. Now, the orders were given by the chief. By the chief, again, is put at the end position in this passive structure. Why did we use by the chief here? as the doer of the action because we wanted, again, to emphasize or stress the importance of this structure in this sentence. Let's practice. So let's transform the following active sentences into the passive ones. I'm sure you can recognize this man in the picture. It's Shakespeare. Now, Shakespeare wrote Hamlet. This is an active statement. So let's now see how we can transform it. Now, Hamlet was written by Shakespeare. This is passive sentence, and now we can compare these two sentences. Here we have an active statement, Shakespeare wrote Hamlet, and here we have passive one. So Shakespeare wrote Hamlet can be transformed into the past passive in the following way. Hamlet was written by Shakespeare. Now, let's pay attention to the following active statement. Somebody stole my phone a few days ago. How can we transform this statement into the past passive? My phone was stolen a few days ago. Now, again, in this picture we can see an angry mother. My mother punished my sister. This is an active statement. So let's see in which way we can transform this statement into the past passive. In past passive, it's got the following form. My sister was punished by my mother. You can see here that my sister, that had the function of the object in the first sentence, now becomes the subject in the passive sentence. Punished, which was an active verb, is transformed as was punished in the passive structure. And my mother, which was the subject in an active sentence, now takes the end position and is the doer of the action. Now, let's pay attention to the following example. People caused many accidents by dangerous driving. This is an active statement. How can we transform this active sentence into the passive one? Well, in the following way. Many accidents were caused by dangerous driving. Now, we've got the following example as well. The policeman arrested the thieves. This is an active statement, and now let's transform it into the past passive. The thieves were arrested by the policeman. As you see, the policeman was the subject in active sentence. Now, in the passive sentence, it takes the end position and it's got the function of the doer of the action or the passive agent. Arrested, which is an active verb here in past simple, is transformed in the following way. Were arrested. And the thieves that had the function of object in an active sentence now takes the first position in the passive sentence and becomes the subject. A neighbor repaired my broken car. This is an active statement. Let's transform it into the passive one. In past passive, it's got the following form. My broken car was repaired by a neighbor. So, my grandfather built this house. Again, this is an active sentence. My grandfather is the subject. Built is an active verb in past simple. This house is the direct object. How can we transform this sentence into the past passive? Well, in the following way. Now, this house now comes at the first place in this passive structure. This house now is the subject. built, which was an active verb, is now transformed as was built, and my grandfather now takes the end position in the passive sentence and becomes the doer of the action or the passive agent. Let's pay attention to the following example. The voters elected the president yesterday. How can we transform this statement into the past passive? Let's pay attention. The president was elected by the voters yesterday. Now, the voters is the subject in an active statement, but in the passive statement, it becomes the doer of the action or the passive agent and is preceded by. Elected is an active verb which is transformed as was elected in past passive. And the president had the function of direct object, but in the passive statement, now it comes at the first position and becomes the subject. Thank you for taking interest in this presentation. It was my pleasure to share it with you. Thank you.